Hello and welcome to Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group's podcast, a podcast dedicated to tackling Russian hybrid threats, disinformation, and the tools of influence Russian propaganda employs, produced by UCMC Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And today's topic of choice, we are talking about our recent article, Taiwan, How an Island Democracy Resisted the Propaganda Onslaught of Beijing and Moscow, written by Volodymyr Solovian and Anton Khimiak. So the guys in the article discussed and analysed how the results of Taiwan's election may affect the island's democratic information resistance, how China's propaganda methods are evolving, and also why the Kremlin is now seeking justifications for its own aggressive rhetoric towards Taiwan. Volodymyr, let's start straight with you, straight away. For those that haven't read the article, why are the Taiwanese elections, why did they become a mirror of Chinese disinformation activities against the island's democracy?
Hi, Matt, and thanks for your question. So I'd like to start with mentioning that Taiwanese society is polarized over the issue of relations with mainland China. And even the winner of presidential elections, Lai Ching-te, won with only 40% of votes because, according to local legislative, presidential elections consist of one round. That means that Beijing viewed elections in Taiwan as a possibility to bring to power a political force that will support more close relations with People's Republic of China, and that will provide an opportunity for China someday to unify Taiwan and mainland China. That is an issue of great importance, and let's be clear, it's a prerogative number one for Communist Party of China. So, leading opposition in Taiwan, Kuomintang Party and the third force, Taiwan People's Party, have a more moderate stance toward China. And more than 60% of Taiwanese electorate to vote for these two parties. That means that Beijing was close enough for achieving its goals. However, if we look at the results of parliamentary elections to legislative yuan, we may witness that nor ruling Democratic Party nor the main opposition party, Kuomintang, have enough votes to form a parliamentary majority, and that means that they have to seek an alliance with the third party, Taiwan People's Party, because the alliance between both of them is too toxic for Kuomintang and for Democrats, and the main issue is that their stance towards China is to separate. That means that even if the coalition of ruling party, DPP, and Taiwanese People's Party will be formed, and even if mainland China will put more pressure on President Lai, that means that he will be forced to seek a more cautious policy towards Beijing, despite that he won elections. So that means that perspective of an establishing of a political crisis in Taiwan, and that is a clear perspective if the opposition majority will be formed in parliament. I mean majority which will consist of Kuomintang Party and DPP. And that will open a window for much more deepened influence of Beijing, and undoubtedly People's Republic of China will exploit this situation and confrontation between parliament and presidential administration. That was the main aim for Beijing, to exploit distrust among the Taiwanese society, and according to results of the parliamentary elections, that means that somehow China has achieved its goal.
Okay, thank you very much there, Volodymyr. So let's pull this into the world of Russian influence and Russian disinformation as well. We know Russia has fallen into China's suffocating embrace as a result of its aggression against Ukraine, as well as its political and economic isolation from the West. And the Kremlin's reliance on its senior comrades in Beijing is evident not only in economic terms. In the field of information warfare between China and the USA, Moscow is also following the People's Republic of China's fairway. So, Anton, in what ways is Russia and was Russia involved in the attack on Taiwan's elections? And what were the kind of primary objectives of the Kremlin's propaganda?
Thank you for the question. And first of all, Russia was a repeater of the narratives of mailing China. There were election speculations, horror stories about a war between China and Taiwan that would lead to third world war, and classic accusations towards the United States of meddling in the internal affairs of the third countries. However, at the same time, Russia was creating an information background for Chinese propaganda. In other words, the Kremlin tried to make a picture where the idea of Taiwanese independence is not desirable not only in Beijing but also in the whole world. So similar messages could be used later in Chinese information war to justify their desire to keep the island with them. And regarding the objectives of the Russian Federation, in my opinion, the main ones are two. First one is to fulfill the obligations of being good friend to China in its information campaign. And the second, most important, raise the level of tension in the international community regarding potential escalation in all corners of the planet. So it would help divert attention from her own war of aggression in Ukraine.
And Anton, how does Russia attempt to incorporate Putin's pseudo-ideological justification for the war in Ukraine into the Taiwanese context, and drawing parallels between de-Chinization and Taiwanization with alleged de-Russification in Ukraine and former Soviet republics? So how is it attempting to incorporate these?
Okay, actually, this narrative is primarily aimed to humiliate the national dignity of colonial countries. So it is based on a colonial idea of countries that were once part of one state. As a result, attempts to create or strengthen the young independence, such as Ukrainian in 19th and Taiwanese now, with identity are met with opposition from metropolis, China and Russia so far. We should admit that this is a good parallel, but in fact, it only confirms the colonial aggressive intentions towards the neighbors of both China and Russian Federation.
And Volodymyr, let's pull you back into the conversation for a little bit here. Do China and Russia and their propaganda practices in Taiwan, are they mirroring each other, especially in terms of information dissemination and how they compare to the Kremlin's hybrid information warfare against Ukraine over the past decade?
Our analysis of Russian media activities regarding Taiwanese presidential and parliamentary elections provide us a conclusion that Russia tries to imitate Chinese propaganda. Main Russian sources bring Chinese narratives to Russian media space and try to export these messages towards societies of the global south, and even making Chinese propaganda louder. But the main purpose of Russian propaganda regarding the matter of Taiwan is attempt to portray the United States as a master of Taiwan policy, and Taiwan as a country under the picture of Russian propaganda is a puppet, so-called puppet of the Washington. So that brings us to the conclusion that Russia tries to make a parallels between Ukraine and Taiwan, and describing both countries as a proxy of the West. And that means that Beijing and Moscow have common ground on that matter. And that is part of a global war of narratives between Beijing, Moscow from one side, and the West from another. Russia is also interested in the destabilization in their East Asia as well as other parts of the globe. And the main purpose for Moscow is to distract the West. So if United States will have to bring more weaponry, more financial resources to resist China over Taiwan, that means that Ukraine will be out of this support, and that will open a window of opportunity for Russia to provide its aggression against Ukraine.
Absolutely. We are seeing that evidently now with all of these other conflicts going on in the world and events around the world where this kind of transfer of attention, the war in Ukraine, is being seen and also used by Russia and obviously China in this sense as well. One question for both of you here. I'm going to throw this one straight to Anton, and then it's for you also, Volodymyr. How can Ukraine potentially learn from Taiwan's successful experience in countering external information influence and propaganda, especially in dealing with the similarities that we have observed in Russia's tactics in both regions? Or is it maybe opposite, where Taiwan should be learning from Ukraine, or Taiwan is learning from Ukraine? Anton.
Actually, Ukraine and Taiwan can be benefited both from learning from each other's experience in countering external information influence, such as propaganda. The similarities in Russia's tactics in Ukraine and Chinese tactics in Taiwan highlight the importance of sharing best practices, strategies, and expertise to build resilience against disinformation. By engaging this mutual learning and collaboration, both countries can strengthen their defenses and response to the really evolving challenges of external influence. For example, we can look at the blocking we can look at the case of the blocking of the contactee social media in Ukraine, and Taiwan can choose this path to block TikTok as a Chinese tool of influence to country, and so on. Ukraine can learn from Taiwan how to properly support NGOs that can help to build more resilience in the civil society.
And what about you, Volodymyr? Are you seeing the same? And have you seen any kind of successful attempts for Taiwan to use Ukraine's experiences now?
Yes, I fully agree with Anton that Ukraine should develop infrastructure of independent NGOs that may provide rapid analysis of Russian disinformation activities, and that is Taiwanese experience that may be put on Ukrainian ground. And also the main issue is speed of reaction, and that's why Ukraine should bring more technologies into the process of debunking and verifying all the narratives that Russia tried to bring to Ukrainian informational space. And Taiwanese experience tells us that blockchain technologies, for example, may be a part of this strategy. For example, applications that will online monitor the activities of the user. For example, I have learned that in Taiwan, there is a popular messenger line, and there is an apps that you may install into your smartphone, and they will follow the messaging activities, and if they will find out that you have messaged or get some portion of this information while you're chatting with your friend or relative, for example, the reminder will come to your phone. And that is a great idea from my perspective that may be developed in Ukrainian realities. So that is an issue of an state policy and partnership with Taiwanese NGO and civil society that have experience of such a rapid reaction towards Chinese disinformation activities. So I hope that this partnership between Ukrainian and Taiwanese civil society will develop, and Ukraine will achieve much more success given the experience of Taiwanese NGOs and think tanks and all the staff that is working under the goal of debunking and verifying Chinese disinformation.
I agree with you completely. That idea of the messaging service which enables to debunk is something that we definitely need in Ukraine, seeing the amount of fakes and disinformation which is spread on Telegram. So thank you very much for this podcast today, guys. It was great to get on and to speak to you both about your most recent article, Taiwan, How an Island Democracy Resists the Propaganda Onslaught of Beijing and Moscow. Guys, you can find it online. We will leave the links below in the description. Take care, see you soon, and goodbye.